Hello everyone, Anita here and welcome to another video. Today we are working on a very small, or rather not big, a layered illustration that I've created for the Juicy June challenge. Now, the Juicy June challenge I've mentioned in the videos before. It was a challenge where every single day you were creating illustration with or something with a specific color, mentioned for that day. Now, I've started really good and I've made, I believe, 10 illustrations. I don't even remember, guys. But then I couldn't make them anymore and I felt really bad about it because I really enjoyed making this challenge. So I've decided that even though June is already over, I will be finishing it over the course of the next couple of months when I have time or inspiration strikes. And so you'll probably see me making some illustrations based on these, again. So if you're interested in this challenge, all you have to do is go to Instagram and use the hashtag JuicyJune, and you'll probably be able to find the prompt list, etc., because they're all still there, definitely. So I highly recommend it if you just want to, get some kind of list of easy prompts. So the color for this particular painting is Vermillion, and I'm not going to be going through every single color on the list because some of them are just so similar. I was like, well, that's a bit of a waste of time, at least in my opinion, so I've decided to just go with several colors. And this one is Vermillion. I had this little idea for a little garden fairy. A lot of those, if not all of them, no, a lot, because some of them are actually not based on it. But a lot of those illustrations have been inspired by little fairies ever since the very first one with citrus fruit. And I've created a little tiny fairy and then kind of sort of went from there. So these are all little fairies. They are very similar to each other, but each of them is based on like a flower or a fruit or something else, or a spice. So this particular one was inspired by poppy seeds or poppy heads, the little seed heads that you sometimes see for decoration purposes, etc. Because the red color just reminded me of poppies so much. But I didn't want to paint poppies. I wanted to do something different, so I've decided to paint poppy heads. And with every single of those illustrations, I use only one color, which is the color that the prompt is, telling me to use. In this case, it's a Vermillion, which is it's a very interesting challenge because it makes me think about colors in a little bit of a different way. I've never particularly was interested in how colors are named. For me, red is red, and warm red, cool red, so on. So I'm not really interested in color names, and this really made me think about color names and how those colors differ between each other. And usually every single painting starts the same. I just go on Pinterest and Google the theme. Google and Pinterest, guys, and find the theme name on Pinterest. Look for aesthetic with it or some kind of, different pictures, and then kind of combine that to come up with some kind of idea. So in this case, the little fairy is gardening because that's my favorite thing in the world right now. So she has a watering can, which is also in this really warm, nice Vermilion color. I'm using a colored pencil here, which is also called the Vermillion. That was easy. Sometimes I really had to really push the boundaries to find the colors, especially with curry. But this one was pretty easy because, of course, everybody has Vermillion on their palette. Now, I didn't have it, but it was easy to mix it. And then, of course, the Vermillion colored pencil was easy. So we have a little fairy. She has a watering can. I have no idea what she's watering, honestly. It did not really come up this way on the finished illustration. But she is just carrying her watering can, like fairies do. And then she's wearing a dress that's clearly inspired by poppy seeds. And then she has little freckles and, her entire head is like the poppy seed thing head. And which is just red because I really wanted to use that Vermillion. And then her skin, I also use the Vermillion color, and that's something that comes up with all of the fairies. They just have kind of a translucent skin, and so I bring in a little bit of that color to bring some life to that skin, and I think it's just super cute. So for the other elements, which kind of like the limitation that I set on myself, is that I can use Fineliner, and I'm using only only brown, just like a sepia. I think it's called brown Fineliner. I honestly ruin those Fineliners every single time because I use them in a very sketching way. So I don't really, I use them lightly, but this is a textured paper. And of course, if the paper is textured, then the tip of your pen, which is something that I've learned over the years, the tip of your pen is just getting slowly ruined because of the friction. Fineliners are generally meant for like smooth surface, smooth paper, and that's where they work the best. So I've been wondering for years why in the world every single time I got a Fineliner, after a while, not even the ink, but the actual tip started to become like flatter, and I was like, I'm not really pushing down or anything, I'm just sketching very gently. But that's apparently still too much, especially on textured paper, even though I'm not using like a cold pressed paper or anything just as textured, but it's not a copy paper or it's not Bristol or anything like that. And it just ruins your tip after a while. So yeah, so I go through a lot of Fineliners. And the good part about that is though, that I use my Fineliners in that sketchy way. As you can see me, I really like unfinished, unrefined lines. I find those really clean lines extremely boring for some reason. I like when there's some texture to the line, so that's what I do. I often will make a line and then come back afterwards and just, distress it a little bit. I really love that effect. The good part about, this kind of technique is that even if the Fineliner tip gets a little bit, flatter and a little bit more raspy, it still doesn't matter because I don't really need it to make clean lines. I just need it to have even a little bit of a blurry effect. And that's actually what I'm getting most of the time, is that I will use that juicy new tip from a new Fineliner. I will use it on the first pass, and for example in the lines that are more in the shadow to bring the the contrast and definition, and then I'll come back with that little bit more used Fineliner and I will distress the lines, and I love that effect so much. I know not everybody is into it because the whole idea of a line art is that it's clean and polished and everything. Well, it's just not something that appeals to me. So here I'm making some, I've drew the background elements with the Fineliner, and I'm also coming in and drawing some wings. The wings are always drawn with a blue colored pencil because I started using, with the very first illustrations, I started using a blue pencil. However, that thing didn't really look nice with some of the colors, so I switched to a regular pencil after a while. But the wings are supposed to be white or transparent, and it actually looks beautiful with just colored pencil. Mechanical pencil. I use that thing all the time. And it looks really, really nice, and I just kept it specifically for the wings. So here you see me starting to assemble the piece. Now this is the most time-consuming process in the entire thing, like even worse than cutting. Because with cutting, you can just put something in the background, like a movie, and you can just, you're just cutting. And I can cut it on my couch, for example. But with assembly, you have to be focused on it and constantly try things on and make sure that everything is balanced and make sure that you're not attaching it completely so that you still have some wiggle room. It's fun, but it requires all your attention. And in this case, as you can see, some of the elements I drew off camera just because I come up with them all of a sudden, and just like I was cutting out those normal poppy seed heads, and then I've decided, I want to make a few in red, and I just on my other desk I just painted them in front of the computer and cut them out, and I had them because I felt like it needed some depth. And this is kind of a recurring theme, that I will put down the elements and then I will look at the piece and I will still draw, and you will see me doing it later. I will still draw something that I feel like it's missing. In this particular picture, I felt like the dark brown poppy seed heads were too overwhelming. There was too much brown compared to the red, because if you can see now, there is plenty of that vermilion. It's a beautiful, you can see that it's vermilion, that it's the theme of this picture. I'm kind of struggling with attaching the wings. But once I start adding all the brown elements, they very quickly overwhelm the red, and there was not enough red that I could safely say, the theme of this picture is vermilion. And that's just a personal preference. For me, it was very important that that theme of vermilion was coming through, that really the color was not just an accent color, but that it was a dominating color, and that the brown and the other, brown and blue, that's the two colors that I'm accepting in these pieces. These two are just, little elements. And as you can see, the more I'm adding, even though the composition I really like, the colors they're just too strong. So after I did this initial cutting and pasting, I actually took a step back. And also here, another thing, if an element doesn't fit, change it. So I've decided I wanted something at the bottom and to cover those stalks. I really don't like when there are hanging elements that are not tucked behind something. It doesn't feel right. So I've decided that I wanted the heads to be cut, and I cut them and I pasted them, and then I went off camera and I drew one more little head, a little poppy seed, ball. And then I also decided that I wanted some foliage, a little bit more vermilion foliage. So I went in and I've decided to get a colored pencil this time for a little bit more texture, because I've used the colored pencil on the character, I haven't used it in the background, and that kind of bothered me a little bit. And I drew these very simple leaves, and they look so soft, and they add a lot of texture, and they bring more of that color. And I was like, there's that satisfaction feeling that comes up once you're done with the painting, like when you feel, it's done, I can, that's a finished illustration. And I had that after I've added that little bit more of the vermilion, because the fairy still stands out. It doesn't take away from the fairy, but it brings enough color so that everything is nicely pulled together. So here is the finished product, finished illustration. As you can see, I've added a little bit of yellow to the vermilion because I felt it felt a little bit flat. So I wanted to bring out that vermilionness to make it a little bit more saturated. And I feel like you can barely tell. If I didn't tell you, probably wouldn't notice. And yeah, so in the background you can see the citrus one. And once I'm done with all of them, I will show you all of them, don't worry. This one doesn't have that much of a height, but I still feel it's really pretty. So thank you so very much for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this illustration, and I would love to know actually, because that's been kind of something that's been bothering me a little bit. I was wondering, how do you feel about this kind of thing when you have a June challenge but you decide, oh, I'm just going to keep doing it in my own time? It's like the same idea as if you did Inktober in March. Are you okay with that? Because in this particular case, I don't mind, but I would be never able to do Inktober in March. It doesn't fit. Yeah. So, thank you so very much for watching, guys. I will see you in the next video. Bye!